So I want you to picture a clock.
Okay.
But not, just a clock hanging on a wall.
Yeah.
Imagine the mechanism itself. The gears have just frozen.
Like time itself just stopped.
Exactly. The battery didn't die. The gears didn't rust. It's like the universe just held its breath. The poem we're looking at today, it starts right there. It says, truth ran out of time.
Which is, well, it's an incredibly unsettling way to start anything. I mean, we usually think of truth as the one thing that's timeless.
Right. It's supposed to be the bedrock.
But here, right from the opening line, we're told, nope, truth has an expiration date.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today it's a bit of a departure for us. Usually we're wading through sacks of academic journals or, tech news, historical archives.
Yeah, a different kind of source material this time.
But today we're looking at just a single source. It's a poem. It's titled The Ballad of the Silence by Weerathunga W Nimal.
And look, before you reach for the skip button thinking, oh, poetry isn't for me.
Please hang on.
Yeah, please do. Because this isn't really about rhymes or meter. We picked this piece because it offers a sharper analysis of institutional corruption than, I'm serious, half the political science papers we read last month.
It's basically a crime scene investigation.
It is. It's like an autopsy of a society that has decided to forget something terrible.
So let's set that scene. The poem opens at the break of dawn. Bells are ringing. But the very first thing we learn is that a crime has been committed, but no one named the crime.
And that distinction is everything. The difference between an event happening and an event being named. That's the core of the whole piece.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we live in a world where we think if something happens, it's a fact. But what Nimal is arguing here is that a fact doesn't really become truth in a public sense until language is attached to it.
Until it's spoken.
Until it's named.
Exactly. And because it wasn't named, the physical world starts acting. Well, weird.
Yeah, the clock stopped. The candles are described as weeping. It really feels like the environment itself is reacting to this failure to speak.
It creates this completely suffocating atmosphere. But then look at the contrast in the second stanza. This is where I think the poet really starts to twist the knife.
Okay.
You have the streets, and then you have the people.
Right. The streets remembered, shattered glass. The prayers cut short, midair. So the inanimate objects, the pavement, the air, they hold the memory.
Yes. Physical evidence doesn't lie. Glass is either shattered or it isn't. But then you look at the humans.
Yet every mouth was stitched with fear.
Stitched.
That word stitched really stuck with me. It's so surgical.
It's visceral, isn't it?
It is. I mean, usually when we talk about people being silent, you think of maybe a hand over a mouth or a gag.
Something temporary.
Right. But stitched implies a needle. It implies preparation. It implies this silence wasn't a panic reaction. It was a procedure.
That's such a crucial distinction. A hand over the mouth is temporary. Stitching, that's meant to be permanent.
It suggests the capacity to speak has been, mechanically removed from the population.
Exactly. It's not that they won't talk, it's that they've been altered so they can't.
Which, of course, begs the question, who is the surgeon? Who is holding the needle?
And this is where the poem introduces the villain. And I have to say, this is one of the most effective personifications of evil I've read in a long, long time.
It's the character called simply Silence. But this is not at all what I expected. When I hear Silence is the villain, I'm picturing a ghost, a shadow.
Something dark and vague. A monster in a cave.
Yeah, but Nimal goes the complete opposite direction. The Silence walked in polished shoes.
Polished shoes.
It's such a specific, tiny detail.
But it changes everything. I mean, if the villain is a shadow, you run. If the villain is a monster, you fight. But what do you do if the villain is a man in a perfectly tailored suit, wearing polished shoes, walking down a marble hallway?
You don't do anything.
Yeah.
Makes you think of bureaucrats, politicians, corporate fixers.
Exactly. It's the banality of evil. The poem goes on to say, it bowed to crowns and uniforms. This isn't some chaotic force. This is a force of order. It respects hierarchy. It follows protocol.
See, that's actually much scarier to me than a monster, because a monster breaks the rules.
Right.
This silence is the rules.
That's the terror of it. And the poem describes how it feeds itself. It fed on files and vanished names.
Ugh.
Just imagine that. It's not eating people in a literal sense. It's eating their records. It's consuming their very existence on paper.
And then there's this line, it learned to wear the honest face of duty and of task.
I think that's probably the most damning line in the entire text, the honest face of duty.
How many atrocities in history have been carried out by people who are just doing their duty.
I'm just following orders.
I'm just filing the paperwork.
It creates this perfect shield. If you look at the silence, you don't see a killer. You see a functionary. You see someone who's responsible. I'm just doing the task. And it makes the erasure of truth look like standard operating procedure.
So we have this villain who looks like a respectable official, but while he's walking around in his polished shoes eating files, what's happening to the actual people?
And that's where the poem shifts perspective to the domestic.
Mothers counted empty chairs.
And that image, an empty chair, it strikes a very different chord than the files we just talked about. A file is cold data. An empty chair is a void in a home.
It also says, fathers learned to wait, and then children grew with photographs instead of second dates. That part, that's heavy.
It is.
It's not just about the people who are gone, it's about the people left behind, frozen in time.
It's the theft of a future. Those children aren't growing up with fathers, they're growing up with a static image. A photograph doesn't change, it doesn't age.
But the child does.
The child does. So you have this ever-widening gap between the reality of the loss and the frozen memory of the person who's gone.
But hold on, I want to challenge something here. The poem says the fathers learned to wait. Is that passivity? I mean, are they just giving up?
I don't think it's passivity, I think it's paralysis. Remember the stitches. When the entire system is designed to reward silence and punish speech, waiting becomes the only survival mechanism you have left.
You wait for news that never comes.
You wait for a justice that is, as the poem says, running out of time.
And while this is happening, nature itself seems to be getting impatient. The poem says, the ground knew more than speeches did.
It's going back to that idea of physical evidence. You can burn the files, you can silence the witnesses, but the ground, the stones, they were there, they know.
But then comes this warning. And this is where the poem feels less like a detective story and more like a horror movie. How blood can dry, how lies can learn to grow.
That phrasing, learn to grow, is so critical. We tend to think of a lie as a static thing. You tell a lie, and it just sits there.
Right.
But Nimal is suggesting that lies are organic. They're like an invasive species.
So if you leave a lie alone, it doesn't just fade away, it puts down roots.
It evolves. It becomes part of the landscape. If you don't address the crime immediately, the lie grows over, like vines over a ruin, until you can't even see the shape of the original building anymore.
So if the lie is growing and the silence is feeding, surely someone tries to stop it.
The poem acknowledges that. It mentions a whisper trying to cross a bridge or a note beneath the door.
These small, desperate acts of communication.
Right.
But the response from the silence, and this is what I really want to dig into, it doesn't shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
It says, silence paid the guards in time.
Paid the guards in time.
What does that actually look like in the real world? Paying someone in time.
It's the weaponization of delay. I mean, think about any time you've tried to get accountability from a large institution. What happens?
They don't say no.
Never. They say, we're forming a committee to look into it.
We'll get back to you in 6 to 8 weeks.
The inquiry is ongoing. We need to wait for the full report. They are paying the guards with time. They know that human outrage has a shelf life. They know that you have a job and kids and bills to pay, and if they can just stall you long enough,
You get tired.
you get tired, or you die, or you just forget, the silence knows that time is on its side, not yours.
And that makes the next tactic even more insidious. Because after the stalling, then comes the gaslighting.
Oh, this is the part that makes my skin crawl.
The silence actually speaks to the victims, and it sounds helpful.
It sounds reasonable. It says, be patient, heal first.
Don't tear the seam.
Think about that metaphor, don't tear the seam. It implies that society is a nice, neat piece of fabric, and if you, the victim, the one with the empty chair, if you start asking questions, you are the one tearing it apart.
It completely flips the blame. It makes the person seeking the truth look like the aggressor.
Precisely. It frames the search for justice as a disruption. Why can't you just move on? Why do you have to dwell on the past? We need unity now, not division.
I feel like they hear "don't tear the seam" in so many corporate meetings or even family arguments. It's that pressure to keep the peace, even if the peace is a complete fiction.
It's toxic positivity weaponized by the state. By telling people to focus on healing, the institution ensures the wound is never actually cleaned out. It just scabs over with the infection still inside. And that infection is the lie.
And the silence loves the environment this creates. The poem says it loves a crowded room.
Of course. Because noise is great camouflage for silence.
And the amnesia of youth.
That's the generational bet. If you can delay the truth long enough, the people who actually remember it will die. The new generation won't have the memory, they'll just have the stitched version of history.
There's a line here that feels incredibly modern. It thrives where headlines change their skin before the bodies cool.
That is the 24-hour news cycle perfectly distilled into a line of poetry.
It is.
The silence counts on our attention span being shorter than their cover-up. If the headlines change, if the skin of the news updates, the public anger just dissipates. The bodies are still there, but the cameras have already moved on.
Okay, so at this point in the deep dive, I'm feeling pretty hopeless. We have this wealthy, polished villain. We have a system that uses time and healing as weapons. We have a media cycle that helps them. It feels like the perfect crime.
It does. It feels airtight. But this is where the poem pivots. Stanza 11.
Still somewhere.
That word. Still. It's the hinge the whole poem swings on.
Still somewhere, under ashen years, a quiet heartbeat stays.
This is the counter-argument to the silence. You can burn the files. You can stitch the mouths. You can pave over the crime scene. But you cannot change the ontological fact that it happened.
It reminds me of that idea that truth isn't something you create, it's something you discover. It's already there, waiting.
It's stubborn. The names are written in the dark. The silence cannot erase. The poem is saying there's a fundamental limit to the silence's power. It can hide things, but it cannot unmake them.
And then we get this standoff. It feels like a Western movie. For every lie that learns to walk, a truth learns how to stand.
And I love the verb choice there. The lie walks. It's mobile. It shifts. It dances around the issue. It has to keep moving to survive.
But the truth just stands.
It doesn't need to do anything. It just needs to be. Standing implies permanence. It implies something unmovable, like a mountain.
And this leads to a crack in the armor of our villain.
Yeah.
The guy in the polished shoes, he isn't as confident as he looks. And even silence fears the day it's finally named.
And that goes right back to the beginning. No one named the crime. The silence relies entirely on anonymity. It relies on being called duty, or procedure, or unity.
And as soon as you point at it and say, no, you are not duty, you are silence, you are erasure.
Its power begins to evaporate.
So how do we do that? How do we name it? The final stanzas feel like a set of instructions. It's talking to the singer.
Right, so sing this low, don't rush the tune.
Why low? If you want to break a silence, shouldn't you scream?
You would think so. But remember, the silence loves a crowded, noisy room. Screaming is just more noise, it's chaotic, it can be dismissed as hysteria. To dismantle a lie that has been so carefully constructed with files and polished shoes, you need something equally deliberate.
Let every word be weighed.
Exactly. You have to be precise. You aren't just making noise, you're testifying. You are placing the truth on the scale, word by word.
The poet calls this the ballad not of noise, the debts that aren't yet paid.
That's a fascinating way to frame justice, an economic framework, a debt.
Yeah, let's unpack that. Why a debt?
Well, what is a debt? It's an obligation. It's a balance sheet that hasn't been reconciled. When a crime is committed and then covered up, the universe is in a deficit. That empty chair is a debt owed to that family.
And the silence is an attempt to default on that loan.
Right, but like any debt.
Interest accrues.
It does, and you can't just wish it away. The bill eventually comes due.
And that's the final promise of the poem, isn't it? The silence breaks at last, and break it surely must.
It's not presented as a question of if, it's a question of when. Structures built on lies are inherently unstable. They require constant maintenance.
That's a really good point. The silence has to work so hard.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Think about the energy required to maintain a national lie. You have to monitor the press, rewrite the history books, silence the dissenters, manage all those seams. It's an active, expensive, draining process.
Whereas the truth,
just sits there under the ash, waiting. It doesn't cost anything to exist. It just is.
the world will hear what waited long, in grief, in light, in dust.
Grief, light, and dust. The grief is the human cost. The light is the exposure. And the dust is all the time that has passed. But in the end, they all speak.
It is a hopeful ending, but it's a heavy hope. It's not, everything's going to be fine. It's more like the truth is inevitable, but you might have to wait a very long time for it.
You might have to work for it. You have to be the one to sing low. You have to be the one to refuse to just smooth over the seam. Sometimes you have to be the one to rip it open to show the wound underneath.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave the listener with that central image. The polished shoe versus the empty chair.
It really is the central conflict of the poem, boiled down.
The bureaucracy versus the loss.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, the listener, Where do you see those polished shoes in your own life?
And where do you hear that phrase, don't tear the seam?
Yeah. The next time someone tells you to move on or heal before you've actually had your questions answered, just think about who benefits from that kind of healing. Are they trying to help you, or are they just trying to stitch your mouth shut?
Are they asking for peace, or are they asking for silence?
That is the question. And Weerathunga W Nimal gives us the language to ask it.
And we should use it.
Thank you for listening to this investigation. It's been a heavy one, but I think a necessary one. We'll be back next time with something probably a little less poetic, but hopefully just as true.
Until then, take care.